We'll be starting here in a few minutes. We're just waiting for folks to join. So we'll go over some of the tools and things, but welcome. And we look forward to talking with you soon.
Still have a couple more minutes. We'll let people trickle in. Looks like some of you guys are telling us where you're from. Would love to see where everyone is tuning in from. So feel free to drop that info in the chat and we'll just give it a little bit more time for people to join. So for those who are just joining, welcome guys. Thank you for joining. We're just gonna, again, give it a couple more minutes, maybe 1 more minute or so before we get started. Let a few more people trickle in. If you guys wanna drop your location where you guys are tuning in from, that'd be great. Looks like we've got a variety of different states from across the country, which is awesome to see. If you guys also wanna drop some info in the chat, whether you guys are, you're teaching remote or going in school this fall, that'd be great to see as well. We'd love to see what all your different states, school districts are planning for. Looks like we have some virtual in the fall, some still trying to figure it out, which I'm sure. Hybrid approach. Looks like we have one who is planning for being at school. So interesting to see all the different schools and states, what their plans are. All right, so we're going to continue letting people trickle in. I think we are ready to start. Matt, are you good to get going? All right, perfect. So thank you guys all for joining. My name is Ashley. I work in digital marketing at Didax. Thank you guys for attending today's webinar with Matt Christiansen. So just a couple of house rules first to start. So you guys are obviously familiar with the chat button that we've been communicating with. We can certainly keep using that, but if you guys do have any questions, feel free to toggle over to the Q&A tab, which should be on your little activity bar, most likely at the bottom of your Zoom, depending on what you're using, that you guys can ask questions and I can answer quickly throughout the webinar. I will track chat as best as I can, but the Q&A tab is the best to utilize for those questions that I can answer on the spot. We will leave some time at the end for extra questions that I maybe couldn't answer throughout, or anything that pops up at the end. And anything that we don't get to, we will try our best to answer them after the webinar is finished. So without further ado, let me introduce you guys to Matt, our host for today. Matt Christiansen began his career as a high school math teacher in Nevada and Colorado. After a few years in the classroom, Matt moved into a district position as coordinator for K-12 mathematics, where he quickly gained an appreciation for the work that elementary grade teachers do to support children's mathematical journeys. Since leaving the school district, Matt has filled several different roles in educational publishing, managing the development of award-winning print and online math programs, and helping to bring innovative resources to teachers and students. Matt holds a bachelor's degree and master's degree in mathematics from the University of Northern Colorado, where he also has taught elementary and middle grade teachers seeking their master's degrees in mathematics. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt. And actually, before I do that really quickly, I forgot one more thing. We are going to be doing a giveaway, and we'll be giving away the Dice Games for Multiplication Mastery game set, which you'll be seeing us discuss throughout the webinar. And in order to get yourselves in the running for this giveaway, all you guys need to do is just let us know how you guys would utilize this resource, this product, whether it's in school or virtually, because we do offer it both digitally and physical hard copy that you can purchase and receive. So just type in the chat what you guys would like to, how you guys would like to use it, what you'll be able to do with it, and we'll enter you guys in the running to get that Dice Games for Multiplication Mastery. So now I'll hand it over to Matt.
Thanks, Ashley. Welcome, everybody. It's so nice to see people here from all over the country, all over North America. I see some folks from Canada as well that are joining us, so that's really exciting. We're going to, of course, talk today about multiplication mastery and some things there. A couple things I did want to point out for you as well. At the end of the webinar, Ashley will be sending out a couple of samples of the games and some other activities as well that we'll talk about today. And if you're not our lucky winner of the set, we are offering a 20% off deal as well that I think Ashley's going to talk about later too, but you can see that down at the bottom of the screen there. So I just wanted to let you know about that. So again, my name is Matt Christiansen. Today we're going to talk about building multiplication mastery and fact fluency through engaging games. And so primarily today, we're going to be looking at games that involve dice. And this is something a lot of people have at home, something you probably have in your classroom. If you don't, it's a great resource to have in the classroom. But if it's something you need, especially in this virtual environment that we're working in right now, it's something to think about that if you don't have these, we do offer a free virtual dice manipulative on our website that works. You can use as many dice as you want and roll them, and the link is there for that as well. So students can use that, and we can use that in a variety of different ways as you're doing the games and activities virtually or remotely. So I just saw a question pop up that said, is this webinar good for second grade? Definitely, if towards the end of the year, as you're beginning to think about multiplication, there's some ideas there that that will definitely apply for you and some resources. So, all right. So I want to talk first about working towards fluency and what fluency means. And so I'm going to ask you some questions, and I know you can't answer them, but I do want you to think about them and reflect on them a little bit. So do you have students who struggle to learn multiplication facts? And as you're thinking about students in the past, or maybe some students you know that are coming into your class this year, do they understand the relationship between multiplication and addition? That thing that exists there with the repeated addition, is really preparing us for multiplication. And do they see those connections? Because early on that can help them. And do they see the patterns in multiplication? Because again, those are all things that can help us in our journey towards fluency with the multiplication facts. The National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, of course, has released a position paper on procedural fluency, which encompasses fact fluency, but also goes beyond that. But we know that we want students, when we think about fluency with these multiplication facts, we want them to be able to work accurately. We want them to work efficiently. I think all of us as teachers would love to have students that can do those two things well. And that's definitely part of what procedural fluency is. But it goes beyond that. We need students who can think flexibly, who can use a variety of tools and methods, both mentally and paper and pencil, to think about how they build that fluency and how they understand those facts and those things that work. And really, throughout that whole position paper, there are a lot of statements about the strategies and procedures that students are using to do this. And there should be a variety of strategies and procedures that help build procedural fluency. They say that procedural fluency builds on a foundation of conceptual understanding, strategic reasoning, and problem solving. And so our goal today, as we look at these activities, is to look at things that help build that foundation of conceptual understanding and strategic reasoning and problem solving, but also build on that foundation and help students move towards procedural fluency. And so, think about these activities in both ways as both foundation builders and things that expand and grow and help students do more. So I remember as a young educator reading a lot of John Vandewall's information, and particularly around meaningful practice and what that meant. One of the things that always really stuck with me when it came to fact fluency was his idea that we need to stop thinking about drill and practice as being one thing and really think about them as being two distinct pieces of building this. We have drill, we have practice, and really ultimately, we need to minimize that drill because it's not always productive, and really provide opportunities for meaningful practice for students. Practice that recurs, that keeps coming back, things they can do over and over that build that understanding of fluency and help them work towards that goal of fact and procedural fluency. So we can get to the point of quick recall, which is really what we'd like here. And so the tool, as we think about this today, what we're going to talk about is this resource, which is called Dice Games for Multiplication Mastery. And this particular resource has 6 different games. You can see them all here. Some of them involve 1 dice, some of them involve 2. And the students are going to do different things, but they all center around multiplication and providing that kind of rich, meaningful practice that students need to build procedural fluency. And so you can see the 6 games here. What's really nice about this, though, is that for each one of these games, we provide a variety of practice opportunities. So for example, if I look at the 3 in a row there on the left, I have those cards for times 2, times 3, times 4, times 5, times 6, all the way up to times 12. So it really gives students an opportunity to practice what's going on, and really allows the teacher to focus in on some specific things. So as we think about the dice games, these are all activities that help develop fluency with the multiplication facts 2 through 12, of course, but they go beyond that. These activities reinforce and analyze number patterns. They help students really begin to see patterns in the numbers as they practice over and over, do these meaningful activities. Help students to understand the role and apply the commutative property of multiplication, recognizing that we can flip those facts around and we're going to get the same product regardless of the order of the factors. These activities allow students to engage in probability as they're playing the games and doing the things. You need to think about, well, 3 of the 4 are covered already. Do I really have a good chance of doing this? Begins to get them thinking about some basic ideas of probability as they explore these games. They develop game strategy, which of course is terrific for critical thinking and helping students really understand and get the most out of those games, and help them think about the mathematics they're doing, which of course is key. And then lastly, these activities and games, they provide differentiated learning experiences. As I said, as a teacher, I can use the different levels to target exactly where my students are. If I know I have some students that need help with their times 6 facts, I can use that particular activity and focus in on what it is they need. And I think that opportunity to differentiate and really focus on specific students' needs is terrific. Something that is not always easy to provide in the classroom, and to have a resource that helps me do that as a teacher is a big thing. So the first set of these, I've kind of broken them into 3 areas. The first set really deals with basic multiplication facts. We have 4 games that do that. There's the 3 in a row with either 1 or 2 dice, the zigzag, and the remove. With these, students are going to use 1 or 2 dice. The teacher will choose the multiplier that they're going to be working with, and then they're going to find the associated fact and either cover or uncover a square. These are nice because students can play these by themselves. You can do it with a small group. They can play in teams. They can play against each other. Lots of different things that can go on with these. So I want to focus now on the first activity. This is the first one that you'll be getting for free afterwards, and this is the 3 in a row. And this is the times 7 card. And so here I've rolled 2 dice, a 1 and a 3. And so my first step with this, and one of the nice things with these cards is the instructions are right on the card for students, so they can see how to play, even if they're doing this in a center or on their own. Everything's right there. And so we're going to roll 2 dice. We're going to find the sum. We're going to multiply by 7. So I rolled 2 dice. I found the sum. The sum is 4. Now in this case, because I'm using the 7 multiplier card, I'm going to take my sum of 4 and multiply it by 7 and get 28. So now I can cover up that 28 on my board. And I can do this with, if I'm doing this live, in-person hands-on, I can do this with counters. I can do it with any kind of counter, do it with Unifix cubes. I can do it with anything really that's going to mark that off to show me where that is. So I look for 28. I have several options for 28 on this game board. I'm just going to take that top left one and we'll mark it off. Why might I choose a different one? Well, if I had other counters in another place, I might want to do that, because the objective here, in case you didn't guess by the title of the activity, is to get 3 in a row. So I want to have 3 in a row somewhere. So I don't have any other counters on the board. I'm just going to start with this 28 up there. And having done that, now I can roll again. And this time I roll a 3 and a 4. I'm going to take the 3 and the 4. I'm going to add them together to get 7. Still multiplying by 7. So 7 times 7 gives me 49. And this worked out really well because there was a 49 right next to that 28. So I marked that off. I'm well on my way to 3 in a row. So let's see if we can get lucky here. This time I got a 4 and a 2. That's 6. 6 times 7 is 42. So again, there's lots of places I could play that 42 on the board. But it makes the most sense, and this is where we get into some of the game theory and the ideas about, what's going to give me my best chance for winning. It makes the most sense to play it right up where I'm already playing, where I can get a 42, and I now have 3 different ways that I could get 3 in a row with my next roll. So it really opens up some opportunities. Of course, if I was playing against someone and they're using a different color counter, there's some strategy that comes in as well in terms of blocking, in terms of thinking about how the other player is not only trying to get 3 in a row, but also trying to keep the other person from getting 3 in a row. So really kind of a fun activity that engages students. And at the core of it, they're working on those basic multiplication facts and reinforcing some addition facts as well. We're really working on those basic multiplication facts and providing some meaningful, fun, engaging practice that's going to help students to do that. So the next activity, more or less, this one falls into a category of multiply and compare. This goes beyond just multiplication. I'm still getting the practice with my basic multiplication facts, but I'm also practicing some other mathematical skills that can help me with the content and with other math concepts. So this time I rolled a 2 and a 4. The directions here say I add them together, so I get 6, and then I multiply by the multiplier. So this time we used a times 8 card. See up here? So I did 6 times 8, and I got 48. Now what's nice, the objective with this one is to cover up all the squares, and whoever has more true statements wins the game. But you could vary this and play in different ways. You could play to get 3 in a row, or the diagonals, or 4 in a row. However it works for you, you can adapt this to make that work. But really the core goal here is to cover them all up. So I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, okay, where can I play this 48? Now, a lot of students are naturally going to go right to that center square where we have an equals 48 and play there. But we also have these other comparisons. And it turns out there's actually 5 places on this game board that I could play that 48, that I could cover up since I got that 48. All right, and so again, a little bit of game theory, a little bit of figuring out, okay, what can I do with this? And the nice thing with this is that all is not lost when that happens. Okay, so a couple questions that I'll stop and answer quickly before we go on to the next one. The first one from Andrea, she said, would you give students multiplication charts to refer to or graph paper to make arrays for reference? And I think that it's a great question, Andrea. Using multiplication charts for reference, I mean, that's really something that, in my experience, is kind of a school by school and team by team decision and how you want that to work. I'm not opposed to having them use that as a tool for reference. And I think that there's some value in doing that, especially when they're first learning. But of course, we want to get them to the point where they're not dependent on that. The whole goal of procedural fluency would be to move them beyond that. In terms of graph paper to make arrays, if that's a strategy that you're using with your students to help them with their multiplication facts, then absolutely. I would say, that's okay. Any tool that you're using to help them understand multiplication and build that conceptual understanding of multiplication is great. And then we had another question from Lisa. How do kids know if it's the right answer? Well, there needs to be some agreement. And that's, part of this, the idea of working in groups or teams or doing this in a small group with your students. There needs to be some agreement that their answer is correct. There's not, it's not that they can flip it over and find the answer on the back. They need to have some discussion. And that's really a nice thing with these activities as well, is it does promote some mathematical discussion, whether it's between you and the student or between a pair of students or a group of students, so that they can engage in those kinds of things. So those were great questions. Thank you. All right, and then the last set, the last game here, the checkers. I like these because we get into the idea of multiplying by unit fractions. And the checkers cards actually include the unit fractions 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, and 1/5. And so this idea that students can begin to think about multiplying by fractions as we extend this a little bit, but also thinking about what that means. So with this game, I only roll one die. So you can see I just have one here. I rolled a 4. And so the rules say I multiply it by the first multiplier. So I do 4 times 8, and that's 32. And then I take that 32 and multiply it by 1/2 and get 16. Flavia, I think I'm going to address your question, which is about how I would play this online here in just a second, because certainly a lot of you are looking at the reality of virtual school, and in terms of marking a board like this, there are some options. Of course, there are, if I was doing this with a group, one way to do that is, of course, with Zoom. If you use Zoom or another platform, one of the things I like about Zoom is that I have access to a set of annotation tools, and so do all of your students. Everyone who's on your call, if it's a regular Zoom meeting, has access to some annotation tools. And I know you can't see these. That's one of the downsides of Zoom. But when I open up these tools, I can do some different things. It gives me the option to draw. So we had 16. So I could just use a pencil and put an X through this. There are some other tools that come along with Zoom, like a stamp. So I could use this stamp and put a stamp there. It allows me to do some different things. There's also a stamp that's an X. So students can do this, and as students do it, theirs will come up in different colors. So if I was doing this with a group, I would use some kind of online collaboration tool, whether it was Zoom or something else. Again, with Zoom, this is pretty easy to do. I know the other tools also have some annotation tools. I'm not as familiar with those, so it would be kind of dependent on your tool, but you're welcome to email us, and we can do that. I think Ashley, is that you, Ashley, putting stars on? Okay, yeah, so Ashley is putting some stars on. You can see her annotations come up in a different color. And it just kind of makes it a way to interact with a group of students if I was doing this virtually. Of course, there's other platforms that you can do this in. I know my own children, their teachers use Seesaw a lot, which of course they can mark things and they can mark things up. And it really just depends on the platform. But again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll do our best to answer them with how those work after the webinar here. Okay. Let me turn off my annotation because that's not helpful. Clear. Okay. There we go. All right. And so one of the things that I like about this activity is that it's not just multiplying by a unit fraction. There's the idea that we can begin to think about parts, which is something students have been thinking about already before we formalize it with the unit fraction. So instead of saying, taking my product times 1/2, we can say that we're taking 1/2 of whatever that is. And so this, as we think about the second question that's here on the screen now, how would you use this in conjunction with something like a bar model or other models that you're using? When I think of taking 1/2 of something, that really begins to expand on this for students. They don't have to be ready to think about multiplying fractions. They just need to think about, can I break this into equal parts? And what does it look like? So that second multiplication sign there, it's helpful sometimes to think of that as of. So 4 times 8 is 32, then 1/2 of 32 really builds that idea. The other thing I would ask students as they do this is, what patterns do you see in their work? Because they may begin to see that when I'm multiplying by 8 and then taking 1/2 of it, that it's the same as multiplying by 4. And they may begin to make some connections and see those patterns as they come out with this double multiplication thing and recognize what's happening down there. So as you can engage students in that kind of discussion, I think that that's a real opportunity for us to build that understanding and help students work towards procedural fluency in that way. So some other multiplication activities that you can do with dice. If you didn't have the cards or don't have access to the cards, you just want something quick to do with dice to fill some time. I have a couple ideas for that too. Of course, you could take 2 dice, roll the dice, and find the product. You could start with a regular 6-sided dice. Get students some practice up to 6. For example, here I have 4 and 3. And so I could look at this and say, okay, 4 times 3, that's 12. Just give them some quick practice. It's almost like flashcards, but they're a little more interactive and they change every time. If you need to go beyond the 6-sided dice, of course, you could use 10-sided dice or 12-sided dice to help build, expand into other multiplication facts for students. But again, just a quick activity. You can do this for a set number of rolls. You can do it for a specific time period. They can alternate with a partner or play in a small group, however you choose to do it. Nice quick practice with multiplication. Another thing, and this goes back to the question about an area model, is I can use this when I'm having that discussion initially about area models and just rolling 2 dice to make an area model. So here, 2 and 3. So if I have these 2 dice and I roll them, I want to find that area model. For students, I could ask them to draw an area model that has the factors of 2 and 3. So they might draw something like this, or they could draw something like this. One of the nice things with the area model activity is it really allows you to go into some depth and get some very rich discussion going with students. Are these 2 figures the same? If they are the same, why? If they're not, what's different about them? Certainly they yield the same product. Are there, any pairs of factors that only have 1 figure? And, there's some discussion there about square numbers and what happens. Really a nice way to introduce this idea of an area model and to kind of explore multiplication facts that are happening there. All right. So, of course, we would love to hear any other ideas you have with the dice and would love to hear how these activities can help you in the classroom to do those things. Really, the goal always throughout all of this is, how do we build this idea of procedural fluency? How do we build that foundation, and then how do we build on that foundation through a set of activities that provide meaningful practice and really help students understand the underlying concepts and not just memorizing facts. So Ashley, do we have a few questions?
I think there is. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a question. I think Flavia is putting in another question.
Okay.
On Q&A. So Flavia is asking about the group setting.
Okay, so if we were, of course, doing this remotely, yes, you could absolutely do this in a group. And it would be the same thing. They're going to have You could have each student have their own pair of dice. You know, if we don't want them handing dice around, we can have them talking with each other as they do this. Really, I would do it in a center or, you know, in some kind of small group thing where students can have the opportunity to roll the dice, have that discussion about, you know, here's what I covered up and here's why this works. If you have a group of 5, which I think was your original question, Flavia, and it really goes into, you know, how do I have enough different counters? If I'm using 2 color counters, that's kind of a problem, but you could use, as I said, something like Unifix cubes where you get 5 different colors. You know, really any kind of cube, any kind of other counter where you have a variety of colors or shapes or something to differentiate between the different students. And then they're just going to take turns going around and playing that game and seeing who can get the 3 in a row first.
Flavia says thank you.
You bet. All right. Elizabeth, I just saw your question here about any restrictions taking a picture to put the card into a Google slide presentation. So this is a product that's available both in a digital version and a hard copy version. And you can actually go purchase the digital version of the product. And once you purchase that, you have access as a teacher to use that. So if you were using it with your own students in your own classroom in a Google slide presentation, that's absolutely allowable. It's a PDF file, and you could you know, just put that card in there, not a problem at all. So that the digital version is really nice, especially given our virtual environment for a lot of us right now. But it also makes it very interactive, something you can project, something you can have up on the screen as well for students, and you know, if you're playing in a larger group even. No problem. All right. And then a question about how students access the manipulatives while on Zoom. So that's a great question. So the virtual manipulatives that we offer, if you go to the Didax website, there's 17 different virtual manipulatives. If I were using them with students and having them do that on Zoom, you know, there's a couple different ways you can do that. You probably don't really want your students controlling your screen, but that is one option. The other way to do it would just have them have it open in the background in another window, and they can jump over and use the dice to roll, and then you know, just tell you what they rolled. The other option would be, you know, just have it there side by side in Zoom with your presentation, and then you're just clicking on the roll button for them as you're working with them in a group. Joanne, great question. Can you embed the manipulatives into Google Classroom? So we published embed codes on our website for all of the virtual manipulatives. What we've found is that currently there is not a way, Google does not allow an external web page to be embedded into Google Classroom or into a Google Slides presentation at this point in time. I wish that was not the case, and I think it's, you know, something that we'd like to work on. The virtual manipulatives, however, can be embedded into most learning management systems. They can be embedded into, you know, if you have a class web page or a class blog or anything like that, they can embed there as well. Of course, they can use them there. I don't know about Schoology, Maria, or Marla, excuse me. But again, the embed codes are there on our website, and you're welcome to try it. And you know, if it is a problem for you, feel free to reach out, and we can try to troubleshoot that a little bit and see if we can help. And then a question about Nearpod as well. I think I've heard of people using them with Nearpod, but I don't remember. If any of you who are on the call have used the virtual manipulatives with Nearpod, you know, feel free to jump in the chat there and let us know. But again, I'm not certain about Nearpod either.
And I just included the link for all the HTML codes that we have on site. So it is on the page where the virtual manipulatives live, but I attached it in that chat there. So if anyone wants to download that file easily, you can access all the HTML codes there.
Thanks, Ashley. All right, are there any other questions at this point? And Andrea told us that they are easy to use in Google Classroom. So that's Sounds good to me. Diana, if you have a question, you're welcome to type that in either the chat box or the question and answer box. I see that you raised your hand. All right, Ashley, while she's typing, maybe, do you want to see if you can, you just want to talk about the giveaways and how they're going to get the free stuff? And
Yes, definitely. So after this webinar, we're going to send an email out to everyone who signed up, a recorded version of this webinar so you guys can share it out. You can watch it again. And then we're also going to send PDFs of all of the activities. So the 3 activities that Matt shared with the dice games for for multiplication mastery, and then just some of the extra activities that he discussed at the end. That'll be another PDF, so 4 total games. And then included in that, we'll also have this promo code, so if you guys want to use it later, you guys certainly can. It'll just remind you and also offer you guys those links for the digital copy and the hard copy. And that offer will be valid through next Thursday, so August 13th. And that should hopefully get sent out later this evening, afternoon for some of you, depending on where you guys are located. And then we will pull a winner from everyone that participated in this webinar, and that will be, we'll send you guys a separate email with your information and how to get you guys the free giveaway, and we'll let everyone know who won.
great. And Ashley, somebody did ask if we could post these 2 links that are on the screen right now. Are you going to send those out in the email as well?
Yep. So you'll be able to shop for the digital and hard copy in that email. And then you'll also find it on the page where the recorded version and the free downloadable activities are.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. We appreciate you coming today and listening, and hope that you find these activities useful. Again, always keep in mind we want to be getting to procedural fluency and really, helping students build that foundation of learning. So thank you all. Question, somebody asked if we'll have more webinars. Yep, watch your email. Ashley's good about sending those out. I know we have some others coming up soon. So.
Me too.
Yeah. And I also just wanted to say thanks to Chet Delaney and Mary Saltis, who are the authors of Dice Games of Multiplication Mastery, who are on today as well. And we appreciate them joining and listening in. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.